Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Wave podcast here at the Culture Wave Media Network, and we are back to discuss the penultimate episode of Season 2 of HBO's The Last of Us. I am one of your hosts. My name is Darian Scalamoni. I am joined this time by Liz Seiko.
What's happening?
And Mark Iacobino.
Hey, everyone, I'm back.
The whole crew is back to discuss the video game adaptation that everybody in the comments tells us to play the games. So thank you, everybody who tells us that in the comments. But Mark did play the games, and he's back.
I got you.
So he's here for the references, and Liz and I are here to discuss it from strictly a television standpoint, and then we address how we get to the adaptation. But this is yet another episode where the whole entire episode is in flashback. A very unique storytelling device that they've had this entire season. But this is also what I would imagine would be our actual last episode with Pedro Pascal. And it deals a lot with Joel and Ellie's relationship. It deals a lot with even the untold origin of Joel, which I'm excited to get into, and that's the beginning of the episode. But broad thoughts for you guys. This is a very highly rated episode. I believe it's the second highest rated episode of the season thus far, in a season that I think all of us can say we're a bit disappointed by the execution. So now, after getting an episode that's as highly rated as this one, Liz, do you agree with it's probably the second best episode of the season?
Yes, as like a solid episode, a single episode. I think this was a very sweet, moving episode that had a lot of emotion, really great acting. And I think it did fill in a lot of the question marks of like why things are happening for people that have not played the game. But I'm a little torn also about this episode because do I think it was a good episode as a whole in comparison to what we've seen? Yes. Do I think it should have been the second to last episode? Probably not. I don't know if this is actually like a big enough episode because we were building up all of this momentum in Seattle. And now I think leading into the finale, we've kind of like dropped out of that momentum that was happening. So I think that's why I'm a little torn because I probably would have put this episode in a different place.
Okay.
But I still enjoyed the episode. Like I think it's a good piece of work. I think they should have restructured the show though a bit around it.
Okay. Mark?
I really enjoyed this episode. As you guys said, I've been a little disappointed with this season. I don't want to make too many comparisons with the game, but I think Pedro Pascal just proves that he is a popular actor right now because he earned it, because he's incredible in this episode. I was blown away by his performance, and they were able to pack a lot of time into one episode. You know, this spans his childhood. This spans a couple birthdays with Ellie. Yeah. All of that stuff most of that stuff is original. His childhood is original. That's not in the game. I love the actor that plays his dad. He's Lalo Salamanca from Better Call Saul. He's incredible in that. So I loved seeing him. And I love just the circular storytelling. You know, the first scene connects to the last conversation that Ellie has with Joel. I thought that was great. And I'll have a little hot take here. I think they handled this conversation and this turning point in the game better in the show, which I think some people might say is a bold take, but I actually think this was more effective, but it's also very different. I think you could like either version and that's fine, but I do appreciate how they went about doing this with Pedro's performance. But I also can say that it is a very compressed look at something that took place over a longer amount of time in the game. These flashbacks were more kind of spread out, and here they just kind of pack them all in. I actually think the last scene here between Joel and Ellie is actually one of the last scenes in the entire game. Like this realization for Ellie, seeing, how that came about, and then that conversation kind of having a cliffhanger where, they're like, oh, we're on the road to recovery together, and it gets cut off by Abby. So I really liked it. Long-winded. I'll give it back to Darian.
Yeah, I think that in a season that is filled with a lot of underwhelming episodes, it's one of the better ones. I do agree. I think that Pedro Pascal earned himself an Emmy nom with this episode, which is crazy to say. I mean, he is a fantastic actor. But this might be his best work as Joel across the whole entire show. I think that you see the impact that him as a child. I love that they added the origin of what happens, and I love how they really made that cinematic choice to kind of lump it in and actually have a through line with how Joel started as a young man and to where he becomes as a second chance at being a father. It's just really interesting the way that they decided to do that. And I watched the after episodes where they talk about the crafting of the episode. And so I had known that was not in the game because they talk about how it was in the game. And I love even like the little detail. I don't know if either of you picked up on this, but like when his father touches his shoulder, it's his watch, which I thought was a great touch. And they talk about how, like, again, that conversation obviously must have meant a lot to Joel, and the fact that he's worn that watch his whole life.
Yeah.
The fact that his daughter fixed it for him in the beginning of the series. So it has a great through line with that. But I think what you said is a perfect example of why this show is going wrong in this season. And I think that the structure of this series is not working as a television show. And people are going to hate, and I don't care because I'm coming at it this week because I think that it's a good episode, but the placement and the way, like you said, it's an overstuffed episode. There is a lot that gets accomplished, but it's a little heavy-handed when so much of the rest of the season has been weaker. I wish they could have kind of played this out over several weeks, but I do understand, again, having that shock that we get in episode 2 with Joel, it adds up to how it's done in the game. So it's this really hard balancing act that they're trying to do with this show of being a straight adaptation of the game and also adding these new ideas and trying to make it cinematic for the sake that this is an HBO Sunday program, which is that's prime real estate in the world of television. So that's how I feel about it as a whole. I do think that there's a lot of great work in it, and we'll dive into all of it, but broad thoughts, that's how I'm feeling.
No, I mean, I agree. I think that what they really wanted to do is on the last episode of episode 5, they wanted us, people that haven't again played the game, to be a little surprised that Ellie knew already that Joel had essentially killed all those people to save her. So I think they wanted that shock of like, what do you mean she like knew this whole time? And by them placing these flashbacks throughout the season, it would have taken that shock away. To be honest, I would have been okay not knowing, like, or to know that the whole time. I already kind of figured out, like, I don't know. I just feel like they didn't need to have that shock element. We already had a huge shock of Joel getting killed. Like, you don't need to also just continue having us have our jaws drop at the end of each episode. So I would have been okay if they kind of sprinkled these flashbacks throughout the season to have the thread line of, like, forgiveness being brought in, because I think that's maybe what's missing from Ellie's character is everything that was packed into this episode. We're not seeing any of that throughout the season. And so, like, that's what's missing for the people that aren't really vibing with her and aren't really rooting for her character, is we're not understanding why she's doing anything because they kept it hidden for so long. And then even then, I don't know if this episode, like, really, like, yes, it's jam-packed, but it almost might be a little bit too late to now get us all rooting behind her at this point.
That's how I feel. Mark?
Yeah, I agree. I think if they sprinkled these out with those quiet moments, you know, where Ellie plays that guitar in the auditorium, you know, instead of just doing
Don't even get me started.
instead of just doing the guitar and her like looking off in the distance, maybe have that be a moment that triggers her to go back to her birthday and be like
meaningful flashbacks instead of flashbacks for the sake of flashback.
Right, because they have to pack all of these birthdays and all this stuff into one episode, and I get that they wanted to kind of have this Joel focused episode, and I understand, but at the same time, like you said, Liz, if you have them sprinkled out, you have more of a reason to root for Ellie instead of just kind of having this little romp of her and Dina going on this revenge quest that doesn't really feel like a revenge quest has half the time. But if we have that weight throughout, being reminded like this is why we're doing all this stuff for these times that Ellie misses, and you know, obviously that recovery that she wanted to have with Joel in the end and she got stripped of, like that would have been a lot more effective. But yeah, we'll get into it.
For sure. One thing I mentioned before we started rolling, cool tidbit though, that Neil Druckmann, who did create the video game series, gets to direct the episode. I don't know if Mark, maybe you know, do you know if he directed any episodes previously of this series?
I don't know, but he is like the game director, and they do a lot of mocap with the game. So essentially, they are on sets with people in the mocap outfit. So he's directing in the same type of cinematic way. So I don't think this is a huge leap for him if this is his first episode, but I thought he did a really, really good job.
Yeah, he did. So he actually also did the second episode of the entire series.
Okay.
In fact, so this is his second time directing an episode of the series. And again, I think as a whole, like in a capsule, I think it is a good episode. But I think it kind of pokes at, and it like puts a microscope on the bigger overall problems with this season, which is kind of what I felt, because I'm like sitting there at the end and I'm like, it was an enjoyable episode to watch. They do a lot with the time. Again, I think that it's the most likable Ellie's been all season, and at the same time, it's partially because Ellie, again, Bella's playing younger, like she's playing that naive version. But you disagree?
I don't know, guys. I still am just like not Team Ellie. Like even like there was a moment. There was a moment like in this episode where she just completely throws Joel like under the bus, and I know that that's when you're supposed to sympathize with her and be like, Joel wasn't perfect, but literally in that moment I was like, this bitch is just like
I said
the worst. Is the worst.
Literally out loud I said, oh, this bitch.
Yeah, like I'm just like, and so I also paused it at that moment and I was like, I'm confused. Am I supposed to be rooting for her? And is this the moment that I'm supposed to be like, Joel was kind of like maybe a bad guy, but like, I think Pedro is just too likable, because truly I do not see him in the bad light at all. And like what he did, I don't think was bad. I think what she did of like calling him out and confusing this poor woman whose husband just died is worse.
So I want you to touch on this, because you're someone, you've played both games. We've talked on screen, we've talked off screen about the complicated choice of direction for the second game and how it deals with exactly what Liz is talking about. And then if you can compare it to how is it effective or not as effective on television for you?
In what in
terms of like how a lot of what the second game has to do, correct me if I'm wrong, is grappling with right versus wrong, and who, like, how you can see it from all sides.
Right. Yeah. It's about tribalism. We're seeing it with the Scars and Isaac's group. Like that's a micro or macrocosm of the struggle. They kill one another and then they forget why they were fighting in the first place. And then we have, Abby and Ellie, again, two different perspectives on the same event. One has all these beautiful memories with Joel of these birthdays, of him, taking her in as his own. And then you have it on the other side where, Abby has a father who's a doctor who's trying to literally save the world. So it's like weighing those things is always in the back of your mind, when you're playing the game. And then with the show, that's kind of what you're supposed to be grappling with. But again, if you're not connected to Ellie, then that tension isn't really there. You're not making the audience think that deeply if you're already kind of like, like you're more connected to Joel. I get that. And Pedro's fantastic. And, I do agree. I forget who said it, but someone said like Pedro's too likable. And that is a criticism that's levied against Pedro playing Joel, because Joel in the game, he's not a good person. He's someone who's getting a second chance. And you see that he's, doing this out of, he was doing the mission in the original game out of trying to, Tess, I think her name was, trying to keep her legacy going. Like, okay, fine, I'll finish your mission. I'll take the girl across the country. Like, he didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And then they grow, and that's, his redemption arc, essentially. But then in the end, you see him do this terrible thing. Again, in the worldwide scale of things, probably a very bad guy. And Pedro even says it here. He's like, I'm going to pay for what I did in the afterlife. So I think Pedro's great in the performance, but I think there is something to be said, like, he's too likable, where he doesn't come off as like a morally gray individual.
Yeah, I mean, the casting of the series is going to be a talking point, I feel like, through the remainder of the show. There was one piece of information that I held from you guys until we started rolling, so I will drop it now.
Okay.
Because I'm very interested on your thoughts, and then we can kind of transition back into this episode and the impact on season 2. But Craig Mazin said it needs to go 4 seasons to tell the whole story, which means now, when we were all under the implication that this would probably be a 3-season show, second game would probably require 2 seasons. This is a season in which we have less episodes. We're doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of introducing all these characters, but now they're trying to expand it into 2 more seasons with an unfortunate reality that there is a lead character that a lot of the audience is not getting behind. So giving you that information, the look on Liz's face is why I said I can't wait to tell this information to everybody. And Mark even made a face, but I'll start with you. Knowing that, and now knowing that we have one episode left of this season, how are you feeling about the overall show?
I don't want to watch 2 more seasons. No, okay. My first reaction is, okay. I guess it's because I don't really know exactly like what we're working toward. Again, I talked about this on the last episode. Like, I just don't know where the show is leading toward besides Ellie and Abby like dueling off with each other. And it's like, okay, one of them is going to die eventually. And it's like, do we eventually get back to saving humanity? But I don't know. I don't want to keep seeing just like random episodes in the middle of the season where it's them just riding on horses for 45 minutes trying to like find the next path that they need to go down. Like, I don't want to watch that. I would if like it was fun and entertaining and I really, really, really enjoyed the cast, but I don't. And like, I don't want to watch them have some random banter between the threesome couple.
Yeah, well, I think that there's like compelling drama.
People are gonna come for me in the comments for this, but like I don't want to watch it.
Because and let us know, because I'm curious on what the audience thinks about them going 4 seasons. Because again, even Mark and I have had conversations like I don't think we really thought that was going to happen. I think we thought it was going to be 3. I think the thing is that there's very compelling drama in the series when it comes to the wolves. Again, I'm like excited to see more of Isaac. I'm actually intrigued to see more of Abby because we haven't seen enough of Abby, and I thought Kaitlyn Dever's done a really good job. Having said that, there is no balance in terms of, like you said, like the only character I want to be seeing more of that like I get a joy out of seeing on screen that's alive now is Tommy, and we've gotten like a very non-Tommy season. Like he has not played much of a role at all. Gabriel Luna, and I think he's what's his name? Gabriel. I'm forgetting.
You're the
I said
guy.
Gabriel. I said Gabriel Luna because I'm thinking of Diego Luna. They've acted in things together, but regardless, I want to see more of Tommy. But having said that, Mark, you played the second game. I have brought up the question to you that there's a chance maybe there will be a third game happening. Neil Druckmann also said today that Naughty Dog is working on a second game alongside Intergalactic. Didn't reveal what it was, but if it is Last of Us 3, or even if it's not, your thoughts on the fact that we are getting most likely 2 more seasons of the show after season 2?
There's enough content. I don't doubt that. I just think we've sped through this content here this season, and if they knew they were going to go that far, then they could have done the structure a little bit different here, and they could have probably put a little more meat on the bones to some of these episodes. But we thought, there's only 3 seasons. We got to condense some of this stuff. Okay. And I get they've been creative with condensing things. Like, I get it. Like some of the stuff here with Dina, there was huge gameplay areas where, there wasn't much story happening. It was more like her and Ellie surviving and having some of that banter. You had to condense that. So I get that. But 4 seasons is a lot, especially, when we're already probably halfway through, probably a little less than halfway through the game. And then you're going to take the second half and turn it into 2 whole seasons. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that they need to cover. So it doesn't shock me that they could fill it. I just kind of thought the 3 season was maybe the sweet spot for them. Third game, I still don't believe that that's ever going to happen. I mean, if it does, that's coming out a long time ago. And the continuation of the story, I just feel like would be excessive and like self-indulgent at that point, because the way this game ends is just like pretty bookended. And if you continue it, I would just be like, I feel like you're just milking it at this point.
Gotcha.
So it could be a multiplayer game that they've teased for years, but I'm not going to get into that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I want to say something. we're dropping things. I want to say one thing about it though. I wouldn't hate it if they focus less on Ellie almost more.
We good, Mark?
We're good. Jurassic Park is falling.
We're just gonna leave this sign down. That's really okay.
Okay. Like what I was saying was I wouldn't hate it if they kind of take the microscope off of Ellie a little bit and focus more on the elements that they really haven't looked at. Like the scars I want to know more about those people. Those people are fucking crazy. Like that shit that happened in the forest, absurd. And like, how did we get there? Like, if we're gonna do flashbacks, show us. Like, how are these? Who is this woman that they're worshiping so intentively? And what really was the causing, catalyst between the scars and the wolves? Like, what happened between the two of them? I want to know that. Also, I think Mark and I were talking about this before we actually started filming. Isaac, they give us a huge piece of him and then they're like, forget about him, guys.
I know.
You're
and
not going to get him
it's
again.
It's like the most compelling piece of the season to me besides Joel's death.
Yeah.
So I'm upset about that. I don't think we're going to see that much more of Isaac next week. Maybe we will.
I don't know. I was trying to see what Mark thought the next episode was going to sprinkle.
You're laughing, so I don't know if that means that you think I'm right or you think I'm so off.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect too much more Isaac right now.
Okay. So that's disappointing. I mean, again, I guess we should really. We're talking so much about like the rest of the season and the trajectory.
But I mean, this is the second to last episode. Like, this is supposed to be like the pushing point for like what's to come.
I agree, but it's more. It acts more as closure for the Joel and Ellie situation, which I think it succeeds at. But I don't know if that's necessarily what we need as viewers.
I think it should have came earlier in the season.
Where would you have placed it in the season?
I don't know. I just don't think. I think I would have liked it if it was kind of sprinkled throughout. We just had such like a big change in Ellie's character and such a big push story wise that she's now in this huge. She's in like the belly of the beast almost, and to then be like, all right, we're gonna get back to there. I don't know. I just think that they ripped like the momentum.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the structure of the season has been pretty poor.
And then
I think they've messed up a lot of the way that they've been editing and sequencing the entire season.
And then also, I'm jumping around a little bit. Sorry, but the ending shot of this episode. Can we talk about that for a second? I know I'm going right to the ending, but why do they have her walking up to the movie theater?
Oh, like to get back to Dina and Jesse?
Yeah, but like, what? We're not going to get to see how she got out of the hospital?
Yeah, well, I think that was they're just not going to show you that. I think it's again weird in terms of sequencing because they end last week's episode with the cut to black to her waking up and seeing Joel. So we're starting it there, starting the chapter there, and then essentially bookending it with the black and then going to where she's at in front of the movie theater. But again, it's a very interesting way to kind of sequence that I don't think necessarily is effective for television. I think it disorients the viewer a bit. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, I agree.
So
yeah, I'm like annoyed. Like I literally on the last episode was like, I'm interested to see how she gets out of this place because they said they had it on lockdown. And so what? Now we're just like, boom, oh, character dropped in front of the movie theater. Like, how did she get out of that place?
yeah, it's a good. I mean,
That's not good storytelling. That's not good
criticism.
storytelling.
I think it's a fair criticism. I do.
Sorry, I'm getting
no, I
heated
get it.
about
Yeah, I want you to get heated.
It bothered me. I was like, oh, sweet episode, and then all of a sudden I was like, whoa. I was like, why are we back here? What happened? I was like, what do you mean she's just back?
Yeah, it probably would have been better to maybe start us back where she was in the start of the final episode.
Yes, I thought that it was going to be like, I don't know. I was excited to see how she got out because they literally were saying in the last episode that they were going to lock everything down because they had opened that door and they were like, lock down. How did she just magically get out?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're never going to know the answer to it, I don't think. But who knows? Maybe they'll flash back to that halfway through the finale. But Mark, so you said, I know this from people talking online. A lot of these moments within the birthdays play out in the game. Do all of them play out in the game?
The one that always stands out to me and I think is like the iconic one is the spaceship sequence. Like that of her going and seeing the T-Rex and the spaceship. Like that really stood out to me. I don't think like the one with like the birthday cake. I remember there is a scene where Joel does play the guitar in front of her and sings her that song. I remember that. But I forget if it was sequenced like this on her birthday or not. But definitely the space one is like the big moment.
Yeah, the one that stands out, which makes sense because you've talked about this throughout the season too. There's like certain iconography and symbols that they kind of place that are very obvious Easter eggs to the game and playing into that, which I think is a heartfelt scene with the 16th birthday. And we get that obvious, like we get a massive jump in terms of like the maturity level and the teenagehood that is Ellie and what she's dealing with. There was a line in that scene that I specifically wrote because it plays into the bad writing. And I don't know if it was in the game, but it bothered me.
What was it?
It was, I'm sorry for doing this, and this. She says 3 things, and then she goes, except I'm not. And I was like,
Oh, I don't remember that line.
you don't remember that line?
Mhm.
I do.
It just like, it was something where it's like, even someone that would be immature, I feel like wouldn't say that. And it just felt very not natural to me.
Yeah. That was me with the cake eating. When she almost
she was drugged up. Was she drugged up at that point? She was kind of drugged up because she burned her arm.
Oh, like the
Maybe.
next morning when she just like started eating.
Yeah, I
it.
was just like, who does that? I was like,
16-year-old Ellie
Yeah,
does
I
that.
She's quirky, Liz.
Just let her play into her tropes. But I want to really get to the 19th birthday because that's a big part for me that stood out in this episode. By the way, Joe Pantoliano, I had been seeing, looking at the Emmy lists, that for guest actor, a lot of people had him in the
category.
Right.
Yes, like for the guest actor. And he hasn't been in the season the whole entire time, but now he was in this episode. So I'm excited to see. I was excited to see where his character was going to come in, and then when you get the reveal that it's Gail's husband,
I know.
and playing back to the fact that they had the therapy session where she's like, "Well, you killed my husband." I thought that scene played out really well, and I loved the interactions between Joel and Ellie in that scene. How did you feel about that? And then after you, Mark, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if it is a big part of the game and if it's a central thing for the game.
No, I agree. I thought it was like a really well done scene. I think that the reveal of Eugene being her husband that she referenced before was just like a really, like, I didn't think it was her husband from the beginning, so I thought it was a nice reveal. And yeah, I think it was also just a nice way to tie like Catherine O'Hara's character back into the storyline, because there was a moment where I was like, are we just never gonna see her again? And she just was there for the beginning.
For the therapist, yeah.
Yeah, which I was like, what a waste of Catherine O'Hara's talent. But to bring her back in for this, I'm really happy they did, and I think it was very well done.
Mark, what did you think of the scene, and then as well as if it played in the game?
Yeah, it wasn't in the game, but I think it was actually a very creative way to catalyze the conversation of Joel lying to Ellie in the first place about saving her. Because again, in the game, it's just something that bubbles up in her, and then it finally comes out when she finds like evidence about it when she goes back to that the hospital where it happened. In this, it just felt more natural. Like she already has the suspicions that he's not telling the full truth, and then she has this example of him lying right to her face and being like, I swear I will not kill this man. And then he kills him. You know, is it the right call? Probably. You know, again, it's Joel doing probably the right thing, but it's the fact that he's not being truthful with Ellie and he's taking her word for granted. I think that was a very smart way to bring about that conversation. So I really like that. The whole sequence was cool. I mean, you know, they say, oh, there's a lot of infected, go help them out. They show up, there's no infected. It's just Eugene standing there with like a scratch, and it's like, okay, where'd the infected go? Is there anyone else in the area? Like, I didn't really understand.
Yeah, I wonder again, I don't know who had the radio call kind of in, but they have that they have right as they're kind of approaching them too, where they see the other body being dragged by the horse, because they said there were 2 people that were trapped. I think that was probably alluding to the fact that was the other individual. But yeah, like, what is a lot of infected? Because it's like we've seen them battle hordes. It's like, okay, so were they like surrounded by like 3 or 4 infected, and then they managed to kill them, and then Eugene manages to kill them all, but he gets bit in the end. Like,
I think they showed 1 on the ground, right?
Yeah, they showed a clicker on the ground that they passed. He was obviously out of bullets, so you know we can understand that there was a fight. But again, it's like if they were taking out one clicker by themselves, like, did they need assistance? I don't know. Maybe we're reading too much in, but I just thought it was like an uncreative way to get to that point of him being bitten and then them not have to worry about any other clickers, to just have that interaction.
Yeah, I do think it also does play into the one element though where it's like forcing Joel to make that call with Ellie, because he's like, go home. He said, we're not doing this, and she's like, no, I'm like, we're doing this. Like, I'm not gonna leave you alone to battle a bunch of like infected. Like, we're not doing that. But I can understand what you're saying, because again, logistically, it's like, where's the horde that they're talking about, or where's the surrounding infected they're talking about? But I thought Joe Pantoliano was great. I love him talking about. I love him saying, it's not about what I need to say to her. It's about what she needs to say to me.
Yeah.
And it's just great. I thought that it was probably the most effective part of the episode for me. Maybe besides the opening, which I still love. I love the opening. That was like a really great. And you know what? The funny thing about that is that it's not direct adaptation for those two scenes. Like, when you just said to me that she finds out by getting evidence going to the hospital, like you said, I think them doubling down on the fact that he's making a promise that he knows he's going to break because he's doing the thing that he thinks is right for the community and for his daughter is way more effective storytelling on television. So I think that's the reality of, like, as I said in the beginning, the hardest thing for me has been this entire season, that we are really walking a narrow line of, like, how are we adapting the game and how are we telling this story for television, and how are we going to be able to put the two of them together for something that's effective for premium television. And I don't think it's working as well this season, personally. But the last thing we get, well, we talked a little bit already about her kind of turning her back on Joel in that moment. Did you feel similar to how Liz and I felt in terms of Ellie?
Said that's not true.
No, I do. I actually did like that. I thought that being like the catalyst, of her finally being like, I have to call him out on this because he just lied to me again. She's rebellious, as we've seen throughout this season. So I actually didn't have that much of a problem with it, but okay. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah. I think we just got problems with Ellie in this show, Liz.
I just was like this poor woman's husband died either way. Like, why does it matter? Why does it matter? He was going to die anyways.
Yeah.
Why do you have to call him out right now in front of her?
Because she felt betrayed.
It's not about her right now, there in that moment. It's clearly about this woman whose husband just died.
It's fair. You
can't keep getting away with this. she was putting her foot in the ground.
Yeah, she was done.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, everything she says is so angry all the time.
Angsty.
It's just...
I'm sorry, Liz. Sorry,
I did like another scene that came up that
the porch conversation.
I thought the porch was her best moment of this season.
And so this is what you were talking about, though. Correct me if I'm wrong. Earlier in our episode about you liked that how they handled it better in this compared to the game. So I'm curious about that. What the difference is in that and how they handled it better, in your opinion.
Yeah, so they compressed a lot of scenes. Like I said, it was kind of bubbling up in Ellie where she would kind of hint that she knows, and then we wouldn't see the end of that conversation. Then it would come up, a little while later. But here it's all kind of compressed where she's like, just tell the truth. She's like, just tell the truth. And Pedro was like carrying the scene because you just see how shameful he feels. He's like shaking because she gets closer and closer. She's like, how did we get out of there? Is that the truth? Are there other immune people? And I just thought seeing him just kind of like, he couldn't even speak because he was finally caught after all these years. And I do like that he stood up for himself. He's like, you would never understand why I did it until you have a kid of your own, which I hope you have one day. But I stand by my decision. I would do it again, but I do feel bad for what I did. In the game, he stood up for himself. He's like, I would do it again. It was very similar conversation, but again, like I said, there was a lot of stuff compressed in the show. But he was definitely less outwardly emotional in the game. In the game, it was more of like he's looking off and she's like, but I want to try to forgive you. And he kind of like stutters. He's kind of like, okay, we can do that. And then she kind of like leaves him on the porch to kind of like sit with it. And this one, it's kind of just in your face. Like, he's getting called out. He's moved by it. So that's why I said, like, it'll work for different people. Like in the game, if you like that subtlety, like that'll work for you more than the show. But in the show, if you like that outward pouring of emotion, then you might like this version more. So I think this one, it just came together really good.
Liz?
He was going for that Emmy guys. Maybe that win.
This is the episode they're definitely submitting.
No, I think that it was a really, really well done scene. I think it's her best acting of the season. And I think that it also, I think it's bringing kind of the entire concept of like what's good for you might not be good for everybody. And it really is a fine line of like, what motivates people to go do something to protect like their own. And it's kind of just on a smaller scale in comparison to like the tribes that we're seeing of like, you protect your own. Like he clearly protected Ellie like he wishes he could protected his first daughter. So I think that it was a great scene that also is now allowing the audience to see like in a bigger scope of like, okay, this is what the bigger picture is. And a part of me thinks that it's fully because Pedro was in this and that he understands that there's like a bigger deal for this. I don't know if we're going to get more of these scenes now that he's probably not going to be in any more of it. I hope that they can continue this thread and like make it about humanity versus like the individualistic person, and that sometimes like you don't want to sacrifice your loved one for the world because you don't know everyone in the world.
I think that if we get any more scenes that are similar to this, it's going to have to be with Tommy, and I hope we do. Like I said, I'm still hoping we get more of Tommy along the way. I don't think we're going to get him at all in the final episode of the season, but no, I think that again it was a good scene. I talked a lot about earlier on. I remember Mark and I had this conversation on the premiere episode of this season. Even though I knew what was coming, I was worried about the way they were going to be able to handle the dynamic because Joel and Ellie is such a central part of the DNA of what The Last of Us is. And I think this episode is a perfect example of why that is. And I think that is going to pose potentially problems if we don't start to have more of a direct through line in terms of the way that they're sequencing the story. So I do think it was a really effective scene. I do think Pedro's coming for that Emmy. Don't know if he's going to get it, but he's coming for it. And yeah, I think it's. Would
it be for supporting at this point because he's only in 2 episodes? Or
it would be lead because he's in 3 episodes or more.
Okay.
Technically, and you know what? Maybe that's why he's at the end of last episode. I don't know. But that might make a lot more sense. So that's the TV brain thinking, but. A really well done episode for the most part, I thought. But I think it points a direct microscope on the bigger overall issues with the television adaptation of the games. So that's how I feel.
Yes, because so we end this scene with her being like, that would have been my life purpose if I was like used to make an antidote, essentially. Is that mentality just completely out the window now and her sole focus is to like get Abby? Like, where is that, like, thought in Ellie's mind throughout this entire Seattle trip of, like, I could still be the person that, like, gets
I think that's gone.
Antidote.
I think it's just vengeful revenge at this point.
So unnoted. It's like, I don't want that. I want her to get back to this concept of, like, a bigger worldly picture and not so, like, secular.
Yeah. I don't know if you're going to get it. We'll have to see.
I always thought my takeaway from the first game was always like, would it have mattered if they got an immunity? Like that was my big thing coming out of it because obviously, like, you know, people that were already turned into clickers or already became, you know, the infected, like they couldn't be saved, like they were already gone, and then humanity had reduced itself down to such like a tribal nature. Like even if someone said like, hey, we have an antidote, would that have really changed anything? Would they be able to distribute it to enough people for it to be like? Humanity's coming back, and then obviously all these infected are still out there, so you have to get rid of them. So I thought that was another like morally interesting thing to throw in at the end. Like, was Joel's decision right? Like, he saved this one person for himself, obviously, but even if he didn't, like, what would that cure have made the world turn into anyway? Like, people hoarding that cure, like, no, we're not, it's ours. Like the Fireflies, we're not giving it to anyone. So I think that's another like interesting thing, only because you guys keep mentioning, you know, the immunity and the cure. Like what's the bigger picture?
I think that's a good point. That's a good viewpoint of it,
So
I think.
really, the show's just working toward Abby and Ellie.
Well, I don't
facing
know.
off,
I didn't
and then
play- I
one
didn't
of them
play-
or both of them dying.
I didn't play the game. I can't tell you what it's working towards.
I'm
I'm here for the ride.
The ride.
It's a scary ride, but it's a ride nonetheless.
The ride.
Liz might not be on the ride.
I
much
might not be
longer.
on it next season, but we'll see.
We'll see. But again, a mostly effective episode, but we have the finale upcoming, so intrigued to see how that's going to go. I'm excited to see where they go, and now knowing this is going to be 4 seasons.
Yikes.
I don't know. I don't know where they're going to go with it, but let us know in the comments. What do you guys think? You don't have to comment, play the game anymore, because trust me, we haven't played it, and we're not going to play it. We're not going to play it before the season is over. But Mark has played the game. He's here as our reference. This is why we love him. But we're going to be here to talk about the finale with you guys next week. So let us know your thoughts on the episode in the comments. What do you guys think about them trying to do this adaptation from game to screen? How do you guys feel about the execution, whether you've played the game or you haven't played the game? And if you guys want to subscribe to us, you can with the Culture Raid Media Network. We have a bunch of stuff we're covering. Mark and I just wrapped our coverage of season 2 of Andor, so you guys can check out all of that. We have movie reviews up. We're going to be doing a review for Hurry Up Tomorrow. It should be coming out after this.
Yikes.
We have more reviews upcoming for Mission Impossible and Lilo and Stitch. Other series, interviews, Tribeca Film Festival stuff upcoming next month. So there's a lot of stuff for you guys to check out. And you guys can also follow us on social media. All that stuff is below me in the video, and it's also in our YouTube description. So just signing off, I'm Darian Scalamoni.
I'm Liz Seiko.
I'm Mark Jacobino.
And we'll see you guys next time.
This is The Culture.